There's a moment, you've probably felt it, when you walk into a room and you immediately understand that someone in it is operating on a different level. You can't quite name it. They're not necessarily the loudest person. They might not even be the most attractive or the best dressed. But everyone's attention bends toward them like light around a gravitational field. People lean in when they speak. Conversations restructure themselves around their presence. Decisions somehow reflect their preferences, even when they barely seem to push for it. What are they doing that you're not? The standard answers, confidence, charisma, money, status, are real, but they're downstream of something more fundamental. Something that operates almost entirely beneath the surface of the conversation. The top 1% of social operators, the people who consistently walk into rooms and become the room, are following a set of unspoken laws. Not written down anywhere. Not taught in business school. In many cases, the people using them couldn't fully articulate what they're doing, even if you asked them directly. Today, we're going to make the invisible visible. 5 of these laws, in full. What they are, why they work at a neurological and psychological level, and exactly how to begin applying them, starting in your next social interaction. Stay with me through all 5. Because Law 4 in particular is the one almost nobody talks about. And it's the one I've watched change more rooms than any of the others. The first law. Never explain your value. Demonstrate it. Core principle. The moment you justify your worth, you've already conceded it's in question. Most people, when they enter a new room, a new job, a new social circle, a new meeting, feel a subconscious pressure to establish themselves. To signal, I belong here. I'm worth listening to. I'm valuable. And the way most people do this is by talking, volunteering their credentials, dropping their titles, referencing what they've done, correcting others a little too eagerly to demonstrate expertise. Here's the brutal truth. Every one of those behaviors achieves the opposite of its intention. Social psychology has a concept called the Pratfall Effect, first documented by psychologist Elliot Aronson in 1966. His research showed that people of perceived high competence are actually rated more favorably when they appear slightly fallible, relaxed, unbothered, self-possessed. People of perceived low competence are rated worse when they stumble. The difference isn't the stumble, it's the underlying signal of security. The 1% don't announce their competence. They enact it. Quietly. Consistently. Without referencing themselves as the source. Here's what this looks like in practice. When someone in the room makes a weak argument, the amateur jumps in immediately to correct it, establishing superiority through contradiction. The high-level social operator asks a single, perfectly placed question that causes everyone in the room to arrive at the correction themselves. No announcement, no credit claimed. When someone asks about their background, they don't recite a resume. They tell a story, brief, concrete, with stakes, that embeds the credentials inside an experience. You don't feel like you're being sold to. You feel like you've been let in on something. The rule is simple but takes real discipline. Let your questions demonstrate your thinking. Let your track record be a rumor other people carry for you. Let your reputation enter the room before you do. And if your reputation hasn't built itself yet, start smaller. 1 room, 1 person, 1 demonstration. The compounding effect of consistent behavior over time is the only reliable way status becomes ambient. But controlling how others perceive your value is only half the equation. The other half is controlling what they perceive as scarce. Law 2 is about artificial gravity, and how the most powerful people in any room manufacture it without saying a single word about themselves. The second law controls scarcity, of your time, attention, and approval. Core principle. What is freely available is never truly valued. What is selectively granted becomes magnetic. Economics has a law that social dynamics mirrors almost perfectly. Scarcity drives value. What is rare is prized. What is abundant is overlooked. Most people in social environments are unconsciously making themselves abundant, available to everyone, agreeable with everyone, responsive to every stimulus in the room. And they wonder why no one is particularly drawn to them. The top 1% of social operators understand, sometimes intuitively, sometimes deliberately, that their attention is a currency, and they control the supply. Watch how a genuinely powerful person operates at a networking event. They don't work the room systematically. Watch how a genuinely powerful person operates at a networking event. They don't work the room systematically. They have 2 or 3 deep conversations and leave others wanting more. They don't laugh at every joke, which means when they do laugh, people feel genuinely rewarded. They don't check their phone, not because they're performing presence, but because they've decided this conversation deserves their full resource. That decision is felt. Cialdini's foundational research on influence identified scarcity as one of the 6 core levers of persuasion, and for good reason. Brain imaging studies show the amygdala fires more intensely in response to potential loss than to equivalent gain. When someone's attention feels scarce, the brain treats gaining it as a small victory. People work harder to hold it. They value interactions more. They leave conversations wanting to have done better, which is to say, wanting to come back. There's an important distinction here, and this is where most people misapply this law. This is not about being cold, withholding, or performatively aloof. That reads as insecurity with a thin disguise. True scarcity comes from genuine selectivity. You're not pretending to be busy. You actually have a rich internal life and real standards for how you spend your time. The practical application: slow down your social approvals. Don't confirm plans within seconds. Don't agree with the first opinion in a room before you've had a moment to consider your own. Don't distribute enthusiasm equally. Let it be something people can tell they've genuinely earned. Most importantly, cultivate a life full enough that your presence in any given room is actually a choice. That fullness isn't performance. It radiates on its own. Transition. Scarcity creates pull. But the third law is about something even more counterintuitive. It's about what you do with your mouth closed. The most underestimated weapon in any room is the strategic use of silence, and almost no one is deploying it correctly. Master the architecture of silence. Core principle. In a world where everyone is speaking, silence is the loudest signal you can send. Most people are terrified of silence. It registers somewhere between discomfort and emergency. A void that needs to be filled, immediately, with words, with laughter, with something. This terror is almost universal, and it is mercilessly exploited by people who've learned to feel at home in it. Here's the neurological reason. Silence in social settings activates mild threat responses in most people. The brain interprets unparsed social ambiguity as potential rejection, conflict, or status loss. People will say almost anything to resolve it, including things they didn't intend to say, agreements they didn't intend to make, concessions they'll regret later. The person who owns the silence owns the room. There are 4 distinct ways high-level social operators use silence, each serving a different function. The first is the post-statement pause. You make a point. You stop. You don't rush to explain it, soften it, or add caveats. You let it sit in the room like an object people have to walk around. This forces the other person, or the group, to engage with the idea on its own terms, without the dilution of your own explanation. The amateur speaks, then immediately explains what they just said. The operator speaks, then waits. The second is the negotiation silence. Someone makes you an offer, a business proposition, a social demand, a request. Instead of responding immediately, you pause. 3 seconds. 5 seconds. The other party, uncomfortable, often starts adjusting their offer before you've said a word. This is documented extensively in negotiation research. Chris Voss, former FBI hostage negotiator, calls it one of the most reliable behavioral tools in high-stakes dialogue. The third is the considered response. When asked a difficult or challenging question, don't answer instantly. Take a visible moment to think. This does 2 things simultaneously. It signals that you take the question seriously enough to consider it, and it signals that you're not reactive. Reactivity is the mark of someone who doesn't trust their own thinking. Deliberateness signals the opposite. The fourth, and perhaps most powerful, is silence as disagreement. When someone says something you find reductive or wrong, or beneath the standard of the conversation, don't argue. Simply don't validate it. Hold eye contact, give a slight nod that acknowledges you heard it without endorsing it, and let the conversation move on. The person who argued loudly will be forgotten. The person whose face told you their opinion without a word will stay in your memory. We've covered how you present value, how you create scarcity, and how you weaponize silence. Now we arrive at Law 4, the one I mentioned at the start. This is about a specific kind of social intelligence that rewires how every person in the room relates to you. It has nothing to do with what you say about yourself. It's entirely about what you make others feel about themselves. The fourth law, the underrated one, make people feel seen, not impressed. Core principle. Nobody remembers what you said. Everyone remembers how you made them feel seen in a room full of people being looked past. This is the law that separates the people who are admired from the people who are truly powerful. The amateur's instinct in high-stakes social environments is to try to impress, to be the most interesting person in the room. The 1%'s instinct is to make you feel like the most interesting person in the room. These two strategies produce completely different social outcomes. There is a psychological principle called the spotlight effect, documented by researchers Thomas Gilovich and Kenneth Savitsky. People dramatically overestimate how much others are noticing and evaluating them. Everyone in the room thinks the spotlight is on them, their nervousness, their joke that didn't land, their outfit. This means everyone is walking around in mild social anxiety, quietly desperate to feel seen rather than scrutinized. The person who resolves that anxiety for others becomes, automatically, one of the most important people in the room. The tools here are specific and learnable. First, call people by their name, deliberately and sparingly. Not in a salesperson's way. That pattern is immediately recognizable and creates the opposite effect. But at one moment in a conversation, using someone's name creates a micro moment of recognition that the brain registers as significance. You are not just a voice in the room. You are someone who knows who they are. Second, ask the follow-up question no one else asked. Most social conversation involves people waiting for their turn to speak rather than genuinely processing what was just said. The question that picks up a thread from 3 exchanges ago, that references something the other person mentioned almost in passing, signals that you were actually listening. This is so rare that it is genuinely startling when it happens. People leave conversations like this thinking, that person really gets it. What they actually mean is, that person got me. Third, validate before you contribute. Not with empty affirmations. Those are transparent and condescending. But with specific acknowledgement. That's an interesting constraint you're working within. Or, I hadn't considered it from that angle, before you offer your own perspective. This signals that you process what others bring before you build on it. And it makes people want to keep bringing things to you. The compounding effect of this law over time is remarkable. People who feel seen by you become your advocates in rooms where you're not present. They speak well of you not because you've asked them to, not because you've been strategically nice, but because the experience of being truly noticed is so uncommon that it creates loyalty almost automatically. This is the law that quietly builds empires, and it costs nothing to deploy. The first 4 laws are about how you move inside a room. The 5th law is about something more fundamental, the internal operating system that makes all of the others possible, and what happens when it's missing. This one is about frame control, and it is the foundation everything else rests on. Hold the frame. Every interaction is a negotiation of reality. Core principle. Whoever defines the terms of the conversation controls its outcome. The frame is the context that gives everything inside it meaning. Every social interaction operates inside a frame. An invisible set of assumptions about what the interaction is, who matters in it, what the stakes are, and what kind of behavior is appropriate. Most people never think about the frame. They simply accept the one that's handed to them when they walk in. The 1% set the frame, or they reframe the one they've been handed, before the conversation has a chance to organize itself around someone else's terms. What does this look like in practice? When someone challenges you aggressively in a meeting, trying to undermine a position or test your reaction, the weak response is to defend yourself inside their frame. You accept that this is a confrontation, and you fight on their terms. The strong response is to decline the frame entirely. You treat the challenge as a different kind of conversation. You reframe the aggression as a question. That's a fair point to stress test. Let me think through it properly. You've just converted a conflict into a collaborative analysis. The other person's aggression has nowhere to land.
So we're down, we go.